We take one topic, dig into the sources, and really pull out the key details for you.
And today, we're diving deep into, well, an absolute epic. J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. It's foundational, really. More than just a fantasy adventure, it's shaped so much. Our main source today is the pretty comprehensive Wikipedia entry.
Right, and it gives us a lot to work with. Our goal is to unpack everything, every layer, every detail, even the small stuff mentioned in the source, really get into the weeds of Tolkien's world.
Absolutely. And it started, interestingly, as a sequel to The Hobbit, didn't it? Which was, more of a children's story.
It did, but it just grew massively. It pulled Tolkien into this deeper history he'd already been creating. Middle-earth just sort of took over the narrative.
That's a fascinating evolution.
Yeah.
What do you think really drove that expansion of a simple sequel?
Well, I think The Hobbit's success was key. It opened the door. People wanted more of this world. And Tolkien, well, he had more. Decades worth of languages, mythology.
Already worked out.
Exactly. The ring itself, which was just a handy magic item in The Hobbit, suddenly had this potential for a much darker, bigger story. The seed was already there,
And the time commitment, 1937 to 1949, 12 years. That's
dedication. What does that tell us about his process?
It tells you about the detail. That time let him weave everything together, the languages, the history, the genealogies. It's why Middle-earth feels so solid, so real. It's not just scenery, it's got weight. Imagine 12 years on one story. Incredible passion.
And the result. Over 150 million copies sold. I mean, that number is just staggering. Why do you think it still connects so powerfully today?
I think it boils down to the themes, really. Good versus evil, power corrupting, friendship, the little guy against impossible odds. These things are timeless, aren't they?
They really are.
Plus, the sheer depth of the world. It's just unparalleled. People love getting lost in it. It offers escape, wonder. So that's our mission for this deep dive. We'll trace the plot, look at the whole publication story, unpack the themes, the influences, the adaptations, the huge cultural impact. And like you said, we're not skipping the small stuff. Every detail matters.
Precisely. Because sometimes those tiny details offer the biggest insights into Tolkien's mind or the world itself. So we'll go step by step. Narrative, publishing, themes, style, adaptations, legacy. Cover all the bases.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. The Fellowship of the Ring. It kicks off with Bilbo Baggins' 111th birthday party. A huge affair, the source says. Hobbits came from all over the Shire, even beyond the Shire.
Yeah, that beyond the Shire bit is interesting, isn't it? It suggests Hobbit society was maybe more connected than you'd think. Bilbo, being the adventurous, wealthy one, was probably quite the figure.
A local legend, sort of.
Right. And the party itself, it shows the Shire is pretty comfortable, pretty prosperous, allows for these big community gatherings.
And then, bang, mid-party, Bilbo uses the ring and just vanishes. Pretty dramatic exit.
Definitely makes a statement.
He leaves Bag End, everything, including this ring, to his nephew Frodo. Seems straightforward, but Frodo has no idea what he's just inherited. What's the significance of just leaving the ring like that?
Well, it sets the whole plot in motion, doesn't it? Bilbo himself is still a bit attached, reluctant to give it up even after all those years.
Yeah.
Passing it to Frodo, who's younger, maybe less corrupted by the world. It's like he's passing on this immense burden unknowingly.
And then, nothing. For 17 years, Gandalf only comes back much later. He suspected the ring was dodgy, but it took him that long to be sure.
Yeah, 17 years. It's a long time, but it underlines how serious this is. Gandalf needed to research, to consult old lore, to be absolutely certain before dropping this bombshell on Frodo.
And what a bombshell. This isn't just a magic ring, it's the One Ring, forged by Sauron and Mount Doom to enslave everyone after 17 quiet years in the Shire.
Yeah, exactly. It shatters that piece completely, puts Frodo right at the center of this ancient evil, and it shows Gandalf's role, the wise guide, but also the bearer of terrible news. And the threat wasn't gone, it was just waiting.
And the ring isn't just a tool, it actively corrupts people, twists them. And Sauron wants it back badly. So Gandalf tells Frodo, you have to leave the Shire, now.
Urgent advice. He promises to come back for Frodo's 50th birthday to help, but then he doesn't show up on time.
Right, he gets delayed. What does that mean for Frodo, starting out?
It means Frodo has to find his own courage right from the start,
Yeah.
relying on himself and his friends. It shows Frodo's strength, maybe, but also that things are unpredictable. Even Gandalf can't control everything.
So Frodo sets out just with Sam, his gardener, and their friend Pippin. They pretend they're just moving house to Crickhollow. But almost immediately, they're hunted by the Black Riders.
Yeah.
Scary stuff.
Yeah, the Riders, they are terrifying. Straight away, you feel the reach of Sauron's power. They're relentless, cloaked, radiating fear. They completely shatter the Shire's safety bubble. They embody the immediate danger.
They do get a lucky break, though, meeting Gildor Inglorian and his elves in the woods. The elves sing a hymn to Elbereth, and it seems to drive the riders off. Who's Elbereth?
Gilbereth or Varda, she's one of the Valar, like angelic powers in Tolkien's world. Her name holds real power against darkness, so that hymn is literally a shield.
Okay.
It's our first glimpse, really, of these deeper, ancient powers still active in Middle-earth. The fading power of the elves still counts for something.
So they spend a night with the elves, feeling a bit safer. Then they take a shortcut through Farmer Maggot's land. He sounds like a grumpy character.
He has that reputation, yeah. Grumpy, keeps scary dogs.
But, surprisingly, he ends up helping them, gives them a lift in his wagon to the Bucklebury Ferry. What's the point of this little detour?
It's a nice touch of realism, isn't it? A contrast to the magical elves. Shows not everyone outside the Shire is automatically hostile. Unexpected kindness from ordinary folk. Maggot's suspicion turning to help. It feels grounded.
And at the ferry, they meet Merry. So now there are 4 hobbits. They get to Crickhollow, and finally Merry and Pippin learn the truth about the ring, the quest, everything.
They don't hesitate, they're in. Straight away.
That says a lot about hobbit friendship, doesn't it? Loyalty.
Absolutely. It cements that core group, their willingness to face the unknown, just out of loyalty to Frodo. It shows their bravery. That bond is the heart of it, really. Sets the stage for everything to come.
Right, so to dodge the Black Riders, they decide to go through the Old Forest, which sounds like a bad idea just from the name.
Yeah, not exactly a Sunday stroll.
And sure enough, Merry and Pippin get grabbed by Old Man Willow, this nasty, sentient tree. What does that place represent?
The Old Forest is the wild, untamed part of Middle-earth. Ancient, maybe hostile forces. Old Man Willow embodies that. It's nature, but not the friendly Shire kind. It shows the hobbits are really vulnerable now, outside their comfort zone.
But then rescue. Tom Bombadil shows up.
Yeah.
Master of the Forest. He's such a weird character. Doesn't seem bothered by the ring at all.
He is an enigma. Totally outside the main conflict. Ancient, powerful, but different. His rescue is a moment of respite, but he also adds this layer of mystery. Why isn't he affected by the ring? What is he exactly? Tolkien never fully says.
Yeah, he's strange. After Tom's house, they mess up again, getting lost on the Barrow Downs, spooky burial mounds. And they fall into the spell of the Barrow-wights? What are they?
Nasty spirits haunting the old graves. Remnants of dark times, maybe linked to the Witch King of Angmar long ago. Falling under their spells like touching death itself. It shows the old evils are stirring again because of Sauron. It's a psychological blow, too.
But Frodo resists. He remembers Tom Bombadil and calls for help, and Tom comes again, rescues them, and gives them old swords from the Barrows. How important are those swords?
Frodo showing resilience there is key. He's learning. Tom's second rescue reinforces his role as a local guardian, maybe. And the swords, they're crucial, not just weapons, they're history. Forged in past wars against evil, they give the hobbits a fighting chance, and they carry the symbolic weight, links to the past struggles.
Okay, so eventually, after more travels, they reach Rivendell, Sanctuary, and the big meeting happens. The Council of Elrond.
Right, the pivotal moment. Representatives of all the free peoples gather. Elves, dwarves, men.
And they debate what to do with the ring. The decision. It can't be used, it has to be destroyed. In Mordor. In Mount Doom itself.
The heart of the enemy's territory. An impossible task, seemingly.
And then Frodo steps up. I will take the ring, he says, though I do not know the way. Incredible courage.
It's the turning point, sets the quest, establishes the goal, the stakes, and Frodo, the small, unassuming hobbit, takes on this massive burden. It perfectly captures that theme of the weak carrying the weight.
So the Fellowship is formed, 9 walkers to oppose the 9 riders. Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin, Gandalf, Legolas the elf, Gimli the dwarf, Boromir of Gondor, and Aragorn the heir of Isildur. The composition seems deliberate.
Oh, definitely symbolic. Hobbits, men, elf, dwarf, wizard, all the free peoples united against Sauron. Each brings their own skills, their own history, strength and diversity, basically. Cooperation against the darkness.
Before they leave Rivendell, they get help in Lothlorien, from Celeborn and Galadriel, elven boats, cloaks for camouflage, Lemba's bread.
Vital supplies. Lothlorien itself is this place of ancient elven magic and safety, a last bastion. The gifts aren't just practical, they're like imbued with elven craft, a blessing on their journey.
They travel down the river Anduin, but then they hit the falls of Rauros, impassable by boat.
Yeah, Rauros forces a decision, a physical barrier, but also symbolic. It's where the path splinters, where the fellowship starts to break.
Because that's where Boromir tries to take the ring from Frodo, succumbs to its temptation, a really stark moment.
It really hammers home the ring's power, doesn't it? Even a nobleman like Boromir, wanting to defend his people, he gets twisted by it. Shows how hard it is to resist that allure of power. No one is immune.
Frodo uses the ring to escape, turns invisible, and seeing how the ring affects his friends, he decides he has to go to Mordor alone.
A heartbreaking decision. He feels responsible, wants to protect them from the ring's influence.
But Sam won't let him. His loyalty is absolute. He forces his way into the boat. Meanwhile, the others are attacked by orcs. The Fellowship is broken.
Yeah, that's the end of the Fellowship as a single unit. Frodo uses the ring, which is risky in itself. His choice to go alone is selfless, but Sam's loyalty is just unwavering. It's crucial. And the orc attack scatters everyone else, leading into the next part of the story.
Right, which brings us to the Two Towers. The story splits here. We start with Gandalf, remembering his fight with the Balrog.
In Moria, he killed it but died himself, or seemed to.
But he comes back as Gandalf the White. More powerful, basically taking Saruman's old job as head of the Wizards and the White Council. That's a huge development.
It's massive, his death and return. It's a transformation. He's purified, stronger, has more authority. He's not just a guide now, he's a leader, ready to actively fight the darkness. And Saruman, the old white, has fallen, so Gandalf steps up. It's a real moment of hope.
Gandalf finds Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, tells them Merry and Pippin are alive, captured but safe for now. They all head to Edoras, Rohan's capital.
And Rohan is in a bad way. King Theoden is under the spell of Grima Wormtongue, who's secretly working for Saruman.
Gandalf breaks that spell, though, frees Theoden's mind. Why is getting Rohan back in the fight so important?
Rohan is a key ally. Horse lords, warriors. Saruman was trying to neutralize them through Grima. Restoring Theoden means Rohan can fight back. Rallying the Rohirrim is crucial for the war effort. It marks Rohan's return as a major player.
Theoden gathers his people, and they retreat to Helm's Deep, that ancient fortress. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli go with him. Gandalf rides off again, promising to find more help.
That retreat shows how serious the threat from Saruman is. His Uruk-hai army is massive. Helm's Deep is their best bet for defense. Aragorn and the others staying shows that alliance is holding. Gandalf leaving, well, it builds suspense. They clearly need help badly.
Meanwhile, another power stirs. The Ents, the tree herds. They finally decide Saruman has gone too far, cutting down their forests, Fangorn.
And they march on Isengard. The Ents, it's amazing. They literally tear Saruman's fortress apart, flood it, trap him in his tower, Orthanc.
What's the significance of the Ents getting involved?
It shows even these ancient, slow-to-anger powers can be pushed too far. Nature itself fighting back against Saruman's destructive industry. It's poetic justice, really. Saruman underestimated them completely. It also shows how interconnected everything is in Middle-earth.
And Gandalf nudges them a bit too, right? He convinces Treebeard, the Ent leader, to send the Huorns, these wild or maybe scarier tree creatures, to help at Helm's Deep.
Yeah, Gandalf the strategist, he knows all the players, even the Ents. He persuades Treebeard, and the Huorns become this unexpected, terrifying reinforcement for Rohan. Shows Gandalf acting as this catalyst, bringing forces together.
So back at Helm's Deep, it's looking grim, but then Gandalf arrives at dawn with Erkenbrand and the missing Rohirrim. They charge down the slope,
turning the tide, and the Huorns show up in the valley behind, trapping the fleeing orcs in this sudden dark forest, wiping them out. A complete victory for Rohan.
A huge victory. What does it achieve?
It secures Rohan. Saruman's army is smashed, his power in the region broken. Rohan is now free to help Gondor against the main enemy, Sauron. And it's a massive morale boost, proof that Saruman can be beaten.
After the battle, Gandalf, Theoden, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli ride to Isengard. They find Merry and Pippin there, sitting on the rubble, smoking pipeweed.
Quite the reunion, amidst the ruins of Saruman's stronghold.
Gandalf confronts Saruman, offers him a chance to repent, leave Orthanc. Saruman refuses, too proud.
So Gandalf breaks his staff, strips him of his rank, his power, kicks him out of the Order of Wizards, the White Council, a total fall from grace.
It's a powerful moment. Then Grima, still lurking with Saruman, throws something heavy out the window, a palantir, one of those seeing stones.
Nearly hits Gandalf. Pippin, being Pippin, can't resist picking it up.
Gandalf takes it off him fast, but later that night, Pippin steals a look and finds himself face to face with Sauron through the stone.
A terrible mistake. Sauron sees Pippin and thinks he's the hobbit with the ring, and that Saruman has him prisoner in Orthanc.
So, a misdirection, which might be good, but Pippin's now on Sauron's radar.
Exactly. It buys Frodo some time, maybe because Sauron looks towards Isengard. But it also alerts Sauron that a hobbit is involved and puts Pippin in immense danger. Sauron knows something is up.
Gandalf realizes the danger immediately, grabs Pippin, grabs the palantir, and they ride like mad for Minas Tirith, the capital of Gondor.
Yeah, straight to the front line. Minas Tirith is the main fortress blocking Sauron's path west. Gandalf needs to be there to warn them, advise Denethor the Steward, and prepare for the attack he knows is coming.
Okay, let's switch back to Frodo and Sam. After leaving the Fellowship, they cross the Anduin, struggle through the Emyn Muil, this rocky maze.
And all the while, Gollum is stalking them, desperate to get his precious back.
So they're dealing with harsh terrain, lack of food, and this creepy creature hunting them.
It's grim. The Emyn Muil itself feels like a trap, mirroring their situation. And Gollum is this constant physical reminder of the ring's power and what it can do to you.
They manage to capture Gollum. Sam wants nothing to do with him, but Frodo feels pity. He makes Gollum swear an oath on the ring itself to guide them to Mordor. Wise move. Risky.
It's complicated. Frodo's pity is part of his character, his goodness. But trusting Gollum, extremely risky. The oath is sworn on the thing Gollum desires most, so his loyalty is always questionable. He does guide them, but his inner conflict never goes away.
Gollum leads them through the dead marshes next. Horrible place. Faces in the water. Remnants of old battles.
Yeah, a truly chilling location. Symbolizes the death and decay Sauron spreads. And it's here Sam overhears Gollum talking to himself, arguing, the Smaug side wanting to help, the Gollum side wanting the ring.
That internal battle is fascinating. Shows just how broken the ring made him.
Absolutely. It's tragic, really. The ring didn't just corrupt him, it fractured his very being. That conflict highlights the psychological cost of possessing the ring for so long.
So Gollum leads them all the way to the Black Gate of Mordor, but one look tells them it's impossible. Too heavily guarded.
Yeah, the main entrance is a non-starter. Impassable. Highlights the scale of Sauron's power.
Gollum says there's another way. A secret way. South, then east, up a hidden mountain pass into Mordor.
The Pass of Cirith Ungol sounds ominous.
Frodo agrees. They head south through Ithilien, which is surprisingly beautiful, though still dangerous. And there, they get captured by Rangers of Gondor, led by Faramir, Boromir's younger brother.
Ah, Faramir, a crucial encounter.
And unlike Boromir, Faramir resists the ring's temptation. He questions Frodo, learns about the quest, and then lets them go.
A huge moment.
It's incredibly significant. Faramir sees the ring, understands its power, probably feels its pull, but chooses not to take it. Especially poignant, given what happened to Boromir. It shows his strength of character, his wisdom. It's a massive act of faith and integrity, allowing the quest to continue. A real beacon of hope.
And that leads us into the final part, the Return of the King. The source material gives fewer specifics here, but it's the climax. Right, everything comes together. The great battles, the siege of Minas Tirith, the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, Aragorn stepping up.
Frodo and Sam's final, agonizing journey through Mordor itself, to Mount Doom.
The destruction of the ring, Sauron's final defeat, Aragorn becoming king.
And the hobbits returning home. Only to find the Shire isn't safe either. The scouring of the Shire. It wraps everything up.
It does. The return journey, the final cleansing of evil, the bittersweet goodbyes. It's the culmination of all those threads.
Okay, let's shift gears to how this whole thing came to be. The writing and publication history is its own epic tale. 12 years writing, 1937 to 49. Revisions finished October 49. But he wasn't done with Middle-earth even then.
No, not at all. He then poured a huge amount of effort into the appendices. You know, all that extra history, the languages, calendars, family trees.
Incredible detail.
Right. And he kept tweaking the main text too, minor revisions across all 6 books as he thought of them. He was constantly refining this world.
Those appendices are amazing, like finding a hidden library attached to this story. What was his goal with those?
I think he wanted to show Middle-earth wasn't just a backdrop. It was a world with a deep history, its own logic. The appendices give it that feeling of reality, of immense depth, like you're reading a true history. It invites you to explore beyond the main story.
And the original manuscript, 9,250 pages. That's unbelievable. Kept at Marquette University now.
Just imagine the sheer physical work, let alone the creative effort. All those drafts, notes, maps. It shows how exhaustively he developed his ideas.
He originally wanted to publish it all together with the Silmarillion, didn't he? His big mythology book. But Allen and Unwin said no.
Yeah, likely a commercial decision. The Silmarillion is denser, more like ancient myth. Publishing both together would have been a massive, maybe intimidating book, probably seemed too risky financially back then.
So he tried Collins Publishers, 1950 to 52, but an editor there, Milton Waldman, said the novel needed shortening.
Shortening The Lord of the Rings, can you imagine? It shows how unusual the book was for its time. Publishers weren't sure how to handle something so big, so complex, it didn't fit the mold.
So that didn't work out. He went back to Allen and Unwin, specifically to Rayner Unwin, the son of the original publisher, and Rayner agreed in 52 to publish it, but still without the Silmarillion.
Rayner Unwin deserves a lot of credit. He'd championed The Hobbit as a boy, and he seemed to get what Tolkien was doing. He took the risk.
But then came the practical problem. Post-war, paper shortages, printing costs. The publisher decided to split it into 3 volumes.
Against Tolkien's wishes, he hated that idea.
Why was he so against the 3-volume split?
He saw it as one single book, 6 parts, but one narrative. He felt splitting it broke the flow, created artificial breaks. He thought the pairings in the volumes were wrong too.
Like the Two Towers books 3 and 4, they follow completely different characters in different places, not really a single Two Towers narrative flow.
Exactly. He knew his structure inside out. He designed it so carefully, the parallel stories, the pacing. The 3-volume split messed with that, purely for practical reasons. He felt it misrepresented his work.
But it happened anyway. Fellowship in July 54, Two Towers November 54, Return of the King October 55.
How did that staggered release affect things, do you think?
It probably built anticipation, gave people time to read and discuss each part. But yeah, it also meant readers didn't get the full picture, the interconnectedness, right away. Maybe added to the confusion Tolkien worried about.
Then, in 1965, the second edition came out. With Tolkien's revisions, a new foreword, expanded prologue, and crucially, proper U.S. copyright protection.
That second edition was important. Tolkien got to refine things, add context with the foreword, and the U.S. copyright fixed a major headache, stopping those unauthorized Ace paperback editions. It gave him control back.
And it was those authorized paperbacks, Ballantine, Houghton Mifflin, that really took off in the U.S., especially in the 60s counterculture. Hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Yeah, the timing was right. Paperbacks made it cheap, accessible. And the themes. Fighting big power, the importance of nature, fellowship. It resonated with the 60s vibe. It offered this deep, immersive escape too.
Finally, in 1968, they released a 1-volume edition, back to Tolkien's original concept.
Which must have pleased him. It let people read it as he intended, as one continuous story, emphasized the epic scope.
After Tolkien died in 73, his son Christopher took over, and spent years, until the late 80s, correcting errors in the text.
Christopher Tolkien's dedication was incredible. He ensured his father's work was presented accurately, respecting the original vision. Preserving that legacy was clearly paramount for him.
Then, tech catches up. 1994, HarperCollins digitized the whole text, appendices included.
Made it much easier for scholars, researchers, future editors, easier to search, compare text, analyze the structure, a big step for accessibility.
There was that interesting Millennium edition in 99. 7 volumes, the 6 books, as Tolkien originally titled them, plus the appendices separately.
Yeah, that gave a real sense of Tolkien's intended structure, showed how he broke it down internally, separate from the 3-volume compromise.
And even in 2004, for the 50th anniversary edition, more corrections were made by Hammond and Scull, approved by Christopher. Tiny tweaks continued in 2005-2014. Page numbers still varied between editions too.
It just shows how complex the textual history is and how seriously it's taken as literature. Constant effort to get it right. The varying page numbers are just a practical headache from all those different printings and formats over the years.
Okay, let's dive into the themes. This tension between fate and free will is huge. Gandalf says Bilbo finding the ring was meant to be, and Gollum's role was crucial. How does Tolkien balance destiny and choice?
It's a constant balancing act. There's this sense of a larger plan, providence maybe, guiding events, but characters always have choices. Their decisions matter immensely, even within that larger framework. It's not predetermination, it's interaction.
Right, like Bilbo sparing Gollum. An act of pity, free will, which Frodo later repeats. And that single choice, decades earlier, is ultimately what destroys the ring. Is that just luck? Or something more?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Tolkien leaves it ambiguous. It feels like more than luck, like small acts of goodness ripple outwards, maybe guided by that providence. Mercy shown, mercy received, leading to salvation. It blurs luck and fate.
The source says both fate and free will are key. Frodo chooses to go to Mordor. Gandalf, Aragorn, Galadriel actively refuse the ring. Big choices. But then at the very end, Frodo can't destroy it himself. Gollum has to intervene, accidentally.
It shows the limits of free will against overwhelming temptation, perhaps. Frodo's will carried him almost all the way, but the ring's power was too great at the final moment. Maybe fate or providence needed that final, chaotic intervention from Gollum, facilitated by Bilbo's earlier mercy. It's complex.
And we also see Sam's vision in Galadriel's mirror, the ruined Shire. That
Yeah.
motivates him. And Arwen choosing mortality for love.
Yeah.
Very personal acts of will.
Sam's vision fuels his resolve, gives him something concrete to fight for beyond just Frodo. Arwen's choice is huge, sacrificing immortality for love, a deeply personal decision that runs parallel to the main war plot, showing individual choice matters on all levels.
Then there's the theme of power. Lord Acton's famous quote, "Power corrupts," seems tailor-made for the One Ring.
Absolutely. The ring is the ultimate symbol of corrupting power. It promises control, but it just twists and consumes the user. It feeds on their desires, their weaknesses.
Gandalf warns, it takes hold and devours. And the wise ones, Gandalf, Elrond, Galadriel, Aragorn, Faramir, they all refuse it, even when they could imagine using it for good.
Their refusal is their wisdom. They know themselves, know the trap. They understand that absolute power would destroy them, turn their good intentions into tyranny. It takes real strength, real humility to say no to that kind of power.
But the hobbits, Frodo and Sam especially, seem more resistant. Not immune, obviously look at Frodo's struggle, Bilbo's possessiveness, and Gollum, but more resistant than, say, Boromir. Why?
Maybe it's their simplicity, their lack of grand ambition. Hobbits generally want good food, comfort, friendship, not empires or dominion over others. That might make them less fertile ground for the ring's promises.
Less hooks for the ring to grab onto.
Sort of, but they are affected. Frodo's burden is immense. Bilbo finds it hard to let go, and Gollum is the ultimate warning. Even a hobbit-like creature can be utterly destroyed by it over time.
And we see the desire for the ring destroy Boromir, even without him ever wearing it, and Smaug killing Déagol for it right at the start.
Stark examples. Shows how the desire for power, amplified by the ring's presence, can be just as destructive as wielding it. Overrides loyalty, morality, everything.
The source also mentions Christian motifs, especially hope. Aragorn using the Palantir successfully is given as an example. How does Tolkien's Catholicism come through here?
Tolkien's faith definitely permeates the work, often subtly. Hope in the face of despair is a very strong Christian theme. Aragorn represents hope. His name, Estel, means hope. He uses the Palantir rightfully as the true king.
Right, Estel. And Arwen cries, "Estel, Estel," on his deathbed. So Aragorn used the Palantir correctly, but Saruman and Denethor fall into pride or despair using theirs. The source links this to Catholic sins against hope.
Yes, within that framework, Aragorn embodies the virtue of hope, using power responsibly. Saruman's pride, his belief he can control Sauron or supplant him, and Denethor's utter despair when he sees Sauron's strength. These can be seen as failings, sins against hope, leading to their downfall. It adds a theological layer if you look for it.
And finally, this idea of interlace or hidden connections, things happening simultaneously, only making sense later. The source calls the luck in the story maybe an interaction of providence and free will.
That narrative structure is brilliant, weaving multiple stories together, then revealing the connections. It creates the sense that nothing is truly random. What seems like chance might be part of a bigger pattern shaped by both choices and that guiding hand. It gives the story immense depth and rereadability.
Okay, let's talk style. The language is distinctive. Sam's very down-to-earth. Aragorn's is archaic, noble.
Tolkien was a philologist, a language expert. He used language deliberately to build character and world. Sam's speech roots him firmly in the Shire. Aragorn's high speech reflects his lineage, his destiny. It makes the characters instantly recognizable and adds texture to the world.
And Saruman uses different styles to manipulate people. Gandalf can be chatty or sound like thunder.
Saruman's voice is literally described as one of his powers, his persuasive tool. Gandalf's range shows his wisdom, his adaptability. He can speak to hobbits on their level or command kings. Language is power for them.
There's wordplay too. Mordor sounding like murder. Orthanc, meaning both Mount Fang and cunning mind. Frodo's cracked whisper. Old Man Willow, sometimes called Willow Man.
Subtle touches, but they add layers. Reinforce atmosphere, Mordor, hint at character, Orthanc. describe effects, cracked whisper, maybe even hint at sentience. Willow Man. Tolkien loved playing with words.
And the whole framing device, the prologue, the appendices, maps, genealogies, it makes Tolkien seem like an editor translating old records, not just making it up.
That's key to the immersion. Presenting it as recovered history, with scholarly notes and all, it lends it immense credibility. You start to believe Middle-earth could have been real. It's a masterful technique for world building.
He even wrote a guide to the names for translators, with notes on how names should be handled.
Shows how deeply he cared about the linguistic integrity of his world. Names weren't just labels, they had meaning, history. He wanted that preserved. That's the professor in him shining through.
He drew maps constantly while writing. Tracked distances, moon phases. He even made drawings, calligraphy, cover designs, a facsimile of the Book of Mazarbul for the first edition, though not all were used.
He envisioned a complete package. Words, visuals, maps, all working together to create this believable world. The fact that he prepared so much extra material, even if it wasn't all published initially, shows his holistic approach.
Okay, briefly on adaptations, there have been loads, haven't there? Radio, film, games.
A testament to its enduring appeal. It keeps inspiring creators in different media.
4 radio versions mentioned: BBC 1955, WBAI in the 60s, NPR 79, and another big BBC one in 81 with Ian Holm as Frodo.
The radio ones show the story works powerfully even just through sound and dialogue, Ian Holm playing Frodo then, and Bilbo later in the films. Interesting connection.
Then fan films like The Hunt for Gollum and Born of Hope in 2009.
Shows the passion of the fan base. People love this world so much they want to add to it themselves, fill in the gaps.
The big Amazon TV series, The Rings of Power, set way back in the Second Age, using the appendices.
A huge undertaking, exploring that earlier history based on Tolkien's notes. Shows the continued commercial power and storytelling potential of Middle-earth.
And Warner Bros. Announcing more films planned from 2023. The cinematic journey isn't over.
Seems like Middle-earth is a perennial source for adaptation, always more stories to tell, or different ways to tell them.
And video games, a long list from 2002 to 2023. RPGs, strategy games, MMOs.
Games let you inhabit the world, be part of the adventure. That interactive element is a huge part of its modern legacy.
Lastly, audiobooks. Rob Inglis's classic 1990 version, Phil Dragosh's one using film music, Andy Serkis narrating in 2021.
Different flavors for listeners. Straight narration, more cinematic soundscapes, or hearing it read by Gollum himself. Each offers a unique way to experience the text.
So let's talk legacy. It's massive, beyond just book sales.
It's shaped modern fantasy, influenced culture in countless ways, a true phenomenon.
It won the International Fantasy Award back in '57. Became huge in the US in the 60s, still sells millions, tops polls constantly, BBC's best novels, Amazon's book of the century.
It just keeps resonating. The story, the world, the themes, they have this timeless quality that connects with generation after generation.
And its influence on other creators. Dungeons & Dragons basically lifted its core races, halflings, elves, dwarves, orcs straight from Tolkien, Zelda, Warcraft, Elder Scrolls, countless games owed a debt.
He practically wrote the rulebook for modern fantasy settings, defined the tropes, the archetypes, the feel of epic fantasy. That world building became the template.
Music, too. Donald Swann setting poems to music back in '65 with Tolkien's input. Rock bands like Led Zeppelin referencing it in the '70s. Symphonies written about it.
It's visually and emotionally rich, offering so much inspiration for music. From folk tunes to epic rock to classical compositions, musicians found something powerful in Middle-earth to respond to.
And it's so famous it gets parodied Lord of the Rings and the merchandising. Tolkien sold the rights in '69, leading to Middle-earth Enterprises and everything that followed.
Parody means it's truly part of the cultural furniture. Everyone knows it well enough to get the jokes. And the merchandising, well, it shows the enduring brand power of Middle-earth. Its icons instantly recognizable worldwide.
So wrapping up this deep dive, we've gone through the plot, the painstaking creation, the deep themes, the language, the adaptations, the huge legacy. It's just monumental.
It really is. Looking at all the details, even the small ones from the source, you just appreciate the scale of Tolkien's achievement even more. It's a world you can endlessly explore.
Absolutely. And considering all that incredible detail, the languages, histories, characters, landscapes, what single element do you find most compelling? Why do you think Middle-earth continues to grip people so powerfully generation after generation? That's something maybe we all ponder after spending time in Tolkien's world.
You know, it's funny, The Hobbit often gets labeled just children's literature, but there's such a lasting appeal, a real depth to it, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those stories that keeps drawing you back in. And what's really fascinating is just how much is going on beneath that seemingly simple surface.
Right. It really rewards a closer look.
Definitely.
Well, that's exactly what we're aiming for today. We're going to do a proper deep dive into, well, all the intricate details and the really quite fascinating origins of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, or There and Back Again.
And we're using the Wikipedia entry as our main source, which is honestly incredibly thorough.
It really is. It covers so much ground. The plot, how it was created, the inspirations, provocation, everything.
Pretty much the whole story behind the story.
Exactly. So if you're listening and you've ever wondered about those little details or, how this book actually came to be, how it went from Tolkien's mind to this global thing, well, you're in the right place.
Our goal really is to unpack every significant detail, even the ones that might seem small, to hopefully give everyone a richer sense of the story.
We'll be looking meticulously at, well, everything the article covers. Plot, creation history, sources, publication, revisions, translations, reception, themes, art, adaptations. The lot.
Okay, let's dive right in. Maybe starting with the plot itself. That's the foundation.
Good idea. So the plot, it kicks off introducing us to the hobbits, these comfort-loving people, about half our height, maybe a bit shorter than dwarves, actually.
Right, living these quiet, ordered lives.
And our main guy is Bilbo Baggins, living this super comfortable, very predictable life in his home Bag End. The source even emphasizes that, saying it was always possible to guess beforehand exactly what a Baggins would say. Paints a picture of real routine.
It really does. And establishing that initial, almost exaggerated stability is so important. Well, it makes the arrival of Gandalf and the 13 dwarves feel like such a massive disruption. It's the baseline that the whole extraordinary adventure pushes against.
Yeah.
Think how jarring that would be for someone so set in their ways.
Oh, completely unsettling. 13 dwarves, led by the formidable Thorin Oakenshield. And they arrive with this whole backstory. The dragon Smaug driving their ancestors out of the Lonely Mountains, stealing their treasure. The article really details Thorin's lineage, too, showing their claim.
It's not just a treasure hunt. It's about reclaiming their heritage. And, crucially, they need a burglar.
Right. Not a warrior, a burglar, which is interesting in itself.
That suggests they need cunning, stealth, something different from just fighting. And Gandalf immediately picks Bilbo.
Despite the dwarves being, well, pretty skeptical.
Very skeptical.
Yeah.
Which sets up that early tension, doesn't it? Why Bilbo? What does Gandalf see?
You wonder. And Bilbo, this hobbit who loves his routine, is suddenly supposed to be a master burglar. His reluctance is totally understandable.
It's a huge upheaval.
But something makes him agree. Maybe that Tookish side we'll talk about later, even though the dwarves are clearly thinking, this guy.
Yeah, you can almost picture them rolling their eyes. But that initial doubt actually works well for the story.
How so?
Because every time Bilbo succeeds, every time he shows that unexpected courage, it chips away at their skepticism. It makes his eventual acceptance feel earned.
That's a good point. Okay, so the journey starts, and they almost immediately run into trouble with 3 trolls.
Not charming trolls either. These ones want to eat them.
Definitely. But Gandalf steps in. And I love this bit. He doesn't just blast them. He mimics their voices, makes them argue.
Until the sun comes up. Genius turns them to stone. Wit over strength.
Exactly. And in the troll's lair, they find those important swords.
Right. Elvish swords from Gondolin.
Yeah.
That immediately connects the quest to this deeper, older history. And Bilbo gets his little sword, Sting.
The article also mentions that Bjorn was initially going to be called Medved.
Ugh, the Russian word for bear. Yeah, those little glimpses into the writing process are fascinating. Shows how things evolve.
It really does. Okay, so after the trolls, they reach Rivendell, the last homely house.
An elven sanctuary. And they meet Elrond, who's a huge figure, son of Arundel, deeply connected to the wider mythology. And he helps them read the map.
Specifically, the moon letters on Thorin's map.
And the detail here is amazing. You can only see them under the same phase of moon as when they were written.
Wow.
It gives the map this sense of ancient magic, doesn't it? Secrets revealed only under the right conditions. It's not just directions, it's history.
It's those kinds of details that make Middle-earth feel so real. So then they head into the Misty Mountains. Perilous journey.
And they get captured by goblins, dragged underground.
Gandalf to the rescue again. Though the article notes he was initially called Bledorthin, another name change.
It makes you wonder why Gandalf stuck, doesn't it? Maybe it just felt right or connected better linguistically for Tolkien?
Could be. So after escaping the goblins, Bilbo gets separated. And this is, well, the moment. He finds the ring
In the dark, yeah.
and meets Gollum.
Which leads to the famous riddle game. Life or death, stakes guidance out, or being eaten.
It's such a tense scene. A battle of wits.
And Bilbo wins, but then Gollum realizes his precious is gone.
And he attacks. But Bilbo, with the ring, turns invisible. Pure accident, really.
And escapes. The article points out, crucially, that Bilbo chooses not to kill Gollum there.
A moment of pity or mercy, which has massive consequences later, obviously. Says a lot about Bilbo, even then.
Absolutely. So Bilbo rejoins the dwarves, but they're immediately chased by goblins and wargs, those horrible giant wolves.
Until the eagles swoop in. A classic rescue moment.
Right. And the article reminds us about the clue for the secret door on the Lonely Mountain. That specific detail about the thrush knocking, the setting sun, the last light on the keyhole.
It reinforces that sense of destiny, doesn't it? Not just stumbling upon it, but specific conditions needing to be met. Ancient puzzle pieces falling into place. Their next stop is Beorn's house. This mysterious guy who can turn into a bear.
And his name. The article explains the connection. Old English Beorn, meaning man, but originally bear.
And connects him to Norse figures like Bethvar, Bjarki, and Bjorn, both associated with bears, plus that earlier Medved idea. It's all woven together.
It gives Beorn this primal, ancient feel. He embodies that bear nature. It's not just a magic trick, it's who he is.
Then comes Mirkwood, the name itself, from Old Norse Mirkvigir, dark forest. Very fitting.
And Gandalf leaves them here, off on his own mysterious business.
Leaving them to face the forest alone, which leads to them getting captured twice.
First by giant spiders. Horrible.
And then by the wood elves in their enchanted kingdom.
And both times, it's Bilbo, using the ring, who has to figure out how to rescue them. His reliance on it grows, but so does his own resourcefulness.
Mirkwood really forces him to step up, doesn't it, without Gandalf?
Definitely. He faces different kinds of threats, pure monstrousness with the spiders, and the more subtle magic of the elves. Each escape builds his confidence.
Finally, they emerge from Mirkwood and reach Lake Town, get supplies, rest up.
And then finally, the Lonely Mountain.
And Bilbo has to do the hardest part, infiltrate Smaug's lair, using the ring, obviously. But still, imagine the courage that took.
It's a huge leap from the Hobbit we met at the start, walking into a dragon's den and stealing that cup. That's what sets Smaug off.
Which leads to that amazing confrontation, the conversation between Bilbo and Smaug.
Bilbo using riddles again, just like with Gollum, and cleverly finding out about the dragon's weak spot.
The article points out the parallel with the Old Norse lay of Fafnir, where Sigurd talks riddles with the dragon, Tolkien drawing on these old patterns.
It shows the dragon as intelligent, cunning, not just a beast. The riddles are like a ritual, a test.
But Smaug is furious, feels mocked, and attacks Lake Town in revenge.
Terrible destruction. But then the thrush, that little bird, overhears Bilbo talking about the weak spot.
And tells Bard the bowman, who then shoots Smaug down with one arrow.
It's a great moment. The small playing a vital role, and heroism coming from Bard, who we haven't focused on much until then. And his lineage, heir of Dale, becomes important too.
So the dragon is dead, the dwarves reclaim their kingdom. Victory, but
then the Wood Elves and the men from Lake Town show up, led by Bard, and they want a share of the treasure.
They have good reasons, right? They helped kill the dragon, Bard's in heir, Lake Town was destroyed because of the dwarves.
Legitimate claims, but Thorin, well, he's got dragon sickness by now. He refuses, stubbornly.
That greed, the avarice theme, really comes through here. The treasure corrupts him.
Absolutely. It twists his purpose. He becomes obsessed.
So Bilbo, trying to avoid a fight, does something incredibly brave or maybe desperate. He sneaks out and gives the Arkenstone.
The heart of the mountain.
Yeah.
Thorin's most prized jewel.
Gives it to Bard and the Elven King as a bargaining chip to force Thorin to negotiate.
A huge risk. And Thorin's reaction is just fury. He sees it as betrayal, banishes Bilbo on the spot.
Shows how far gone Thorin is, valuing the stone over Bilbo's loyalty and help. It's quite brutal.
Just as things look like they're about to explode between dwarves, elves, and men, another army arrives.
Dane, Thorin's cousin, with dwarves from the Iron Hills, ready to fight for Thorin.
But before they can clash, another army shows up, goblins and wargs, a massive horde.
Suddenly, the old enemies have to unite against this common threat.
It's a classic trope, but effective. An external danger forces an alliance.
And that leads to the Battle of Five Armies. Huge, chaotic battle. Things look bad for the allies.
Until the eagles arrive again. Always dramatic timing.
And Beorn, in bear form, wreaking havoc, he takes down Bolg, the goblin leader.
That turns the tide. The goblins and wargs are defeated, but it's a costly victory.
Very costly. Thorin is mortally wounded, and so are his nephews, Fili and Kili.
But in his last moments, Thorin reconciles with Bilbo, understands what Bilbo did.
A really poignant moment. Redemption, almost.
And then the eagles arriving. That's pure eucatastrophe, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tolkien's term for that sudden, joyous turn when all seems lost.
Exactly. So after all that, Bilbo finally heads home with only a small share of the treasure.
And arrives to find his stuff being auctioned off because everyone thought he was dead.
Talk about an anticlimax after fighting dragons and goblins.
It's a wonderfully grounding, Hobbit-like ending to his part of the adventure.
And the last details? Bilbo's changed, obviously. Writes poetry, visits elves. His reputation among the respectable hobbits takes a hit, though.
He's not quite respectable anymore, but he seems happier in a way.
And later, Gandalf and Balin visit, confirming Dale and Lake Town are prosperous again. Ties things up nicely. Phew! That's the plot. Now, how did this whole thing even get written?
Right, the history of creation. This is fascinating, too. It starts with Tolkien himself. He was professor of Anglo-Saxon at Oxford, deep in ancient literature like Beowulf, Sir Gawain.
So he had this incredible academic background.
Exactly. And he was already telling stories to his kids. The letters from Father Christmas, for example. Plus, he was developing the mythology that became the Silmarillion. So, The Hobbit wasn't created in isolation.
Makes sense. And the actual moment of inspiration is famous, isn't it?
It is. He was grading exams, apparently quite bored, and just scribbled on a blank page. In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit.
Just like that. Out of nowhere.
He said he had no idea why, and he didn't even do anything with it for quite a while. He just sat there.
Amazing. So that one sentence sparked the whole thing. When did he actually start writing the story?
John Rateliff's research, mentioned in the article, suggests he probably started seriously writing it around the summer of 1930. So a gap between the initial spark and the actual writing.
And he read it to his children as he went along.
Yes, which is lovely, isn't it? It started as a family story, very intimate origins.
Definitely. The early drafts show some really interesting changes, too.
Oh, yeah. Like, Gandalf was originally the dwarf leader's name. The wizard was called Blood-Earthen.
That name again?
I know. The dragon was Priften, Bjorn was Medved. And get this, there were mentions of real places like China and the Gobi Desert.
Wow, that feels totally different from the self-contained Middle-earth we know. More like a whimsical fairy tale, maybe?
Exactly. And initially, the idea was that Bilbo himself would kill the dragon. A very different role for him.
But even early on, elements of his bigger mythology were creeping in, weren't they?
Yes. Elrond was already ruling Rivendell. The swords from the Troll Cave were from Gondolin. The necromancer was Thu, who became Sauron. Mentions of Beren and Luthien, Mirkwood linked to Tornufin.
Even the Goblin King, Gulfimble, whose death supposedly invented golf, which is hilarious, was initially named after the elf Fingolfin.
It shows that even as a children's story, it was connected to that deeper legendarium he was building. The threads were there from early on.
He finished a first draft around January 1933 and shared it with friends.
Including C.S. Lewis, yeah.
Yeah.
Who apparently loved it, called it a really good children's book. High praise from Lewis would have been significant.
Must have been encouraging. So how did it get from his friend's circle to a publisher?
Through a former student, Elaine Griffiths. In 1936, she mentioned the story to Susan Dagnall at the publishers George Allen and Unwin.
Just casually mentioned it.
Seems so. Dagnall was intrigued, asked to see it, liked it, and told Tolkien he should finish it properly and submit it.
Wow. One of those crucial chance encounters.
Absolutely. So Tolkien worked on it more. His son Michael apparently helped type it up left-handed due to an injury.
A family effort, then?
Seems like it. The final typed manuscript went to the publisher in October 1936.
And then came the famous story about the publisher's son.
Right. Stanley Unwin, the boss, gave it to his 10-year-old son Rainer to read and review. A stroke of genius, really.
And Rainer wrote that brilliant little report, summed it up perfectly, recommended it for ages 5 to 9, and even said the maps meant it didn't need illustrations.
Incredibly perceptive for a 10-year-old. He got paid 1 shilling for it.
Best shilling Unwin ever spent, probably. So the book was accepted.
Yes. And Tolkien, being Tolkien, meticulously revised the proofs, making sure corrections didn't change the length and cost the publisher more money. That academic precision again.
Incredible. Okay, so that's how it came to be written and published. What about the sources of inspiration? This feels like a huge topic for Tolkien.
Oh, it absolutely is. The article goes into fantastic detail here. Shows the sheer breadth of what fed into The Hobbit.
Where does it start?
With something quite visual, actually. A Swiss postcard Tolkien owned called Der Berggeist, The Mountain Spirit, by Joseph Madlener. It's thought that image might have directly inspired how Gandalf looks.
Just one picture sparking such an iconic character.
Visuals can be powerful. And also, his own memories of hiking in the Swiss Alps back in 1911 clearly influenced the descriptions of the Misty Mountains.
Bringing his own experience into the fantasy.
Exactly. But the biggest influence, undoubtedly, is Norse mythology.
Right. The article mentions the Dvergadal from the Elder Edda.
Yes, the catalog of dwarves. That's where the names Gandalf and most of the dwarves come from directly. Thorin Oakenshield is just a translation of the Norse name Eikenskaldi.
Wow.
And the general idea of dwarves living underground master smiths connected to treasure that's all deeply rooted in Norse myth.
It's like he took that mythology as a foundation.
Very much so. Gandalf himself is described by Tolkien as an Odinic wanderer.
Like Odin. How so?
Well, the look, old man, beard, staff, hat, but also themes like opposing wolves, Odin and Fenrir, Gandalf and the wargs, and remember Gandalf tricking the trolls?
Yeah, with their voices.
There's a story in the Eddas where the god Thor tricks a dwarf named Alvis in a very similar way, keeping him talking until sunrise. Tolkien knew these stories inside out.
He's weaving these specific mythological threads right in.
Constantly. The Misty Mountains echo the Foggy Mountains in another Norse poem. Mirkwood comes from Murkvir, wargs from Old Norse Vargr. Even Radagast might be linked to a Slavic god, Radagast. It's incredibly layered.
The depth of his knowledge is just amazing. What about the riddle game?
Also draws heavily on tradition. Norse sagas have riddle contests, like Odin's in the Eddas, or in the Saga of King Heidrek. Gollum's riddles feel ancient, maybe influenced by Old English poems like Solomon and Saturn.
And Bilbo's.
They're more like traditional English folk riddles, things children might know. That contrast itself is interesting.
And the conversation with Smaug, also inspired by Norse myth.
Yes, specifically the Lay of Fafnir, where Sigurd talks riddles with the dying dragon Fafnir, who tries to trick him. That idea of the intelligent, manipulative dragon is key.
Then there's Beowulf, obviously. Huge for Tolkien.
Immense. The theft of the cup from the dragon's hoard, the dragon's rage afterwards. It's almost directly from Beowulf.
And the idea of the cursed dragon treasure?
Central to both. The article even notes similarities between Gollum and Grendel, the glowing eyes, the watery lair. Beowulf was clearly a major blueprint.
What about Bjorn again? We mentioned his name.
Right. His shape-shifting connects to Norse figures like Bethvargyorki, the little bear, and his father Bjorn. And Bjorn's fury in the battle echoes the Berserker tradition. He's even compared to Beowulf himself, whose name likely means Beowulf, i.e. bear.
So many layers just in one character.
Tolkien loved that linguistic depth. Even Mirkwood, the spooky forest, its atmosphere, echoes medieval tales about elves and enchantment. The sounds of the elven hunt are similar to a scene in Orfeo, a poem Tolkien translated.
He drew from so many different medieval sources.
Absolutely. And not just ancient myths. William Morris, a 19th century fantasy writer, was also an influence.
How so?
Parallels between Bilbo's journey and Morris's travels in Iceland. Ideas like the desolation around a dragon's lair, the roots of the mountains, even the descriptions of the people in Welderland seem influenced by Morris's book, The House of the Wolfings.
Interesting, less obvious influences.
And George MacDonald, another fantasy pioneer. His descriptions of goblins living underground and hating sunlight seem to have inspired Tolkien's portrayal.
So, Norse myths, Beowulf, medieval romance, later fantasy writers. Anything else?
Well, bringing it back home, Tolkien always insisted hobbits were basically English country folk. There's even a suggestion the name Hobbit might playfully echo Sinclair Lewis's Babbitt.
Babbitt. The novel. Why?
Maybe the idea of an ordinary, respectable figure having unexpected adventures and finding his social standing changed. And Bilbo's name, Baggins, comes from Northern English dialect. Bag End itself was named after his aunt's farm, apparently a deliberate choice over using the French cul-de-sac.
Grounding the fantasy in the familiar.
Exactly. That blend is key to The Hobbit.
And Tolkien didn't just write the words, he drew pictures too.
He did. He created illustrations and maps right alongside the writing, starting by 1936. He sent several black and white drawings and maps to the publisher early in 1937.
And the publisher liked them.
Very much. Even though adding illustrations increased the cost, they saw how integral they were. Though apparently making the moon runes appear when held to light wasn't practical.
Shame. He designed the cover and dust jacket too.
Yes. In summer 1937, the cover had the dragon, mountains, sun, moon, runes. The dust jacket showed a wider scene: mountains, forest, lake towns, Smaug, eagles, sun and moon together for Durin's Day. Even an Anglo-Saxon rune inscription summarizing the book. Meticulous design.
He really controlled the whole vision. I heard he wasn't keen on other artists.
Well, when the U.S. publisher Houghton Mifflin suggested getting an American artist for color illustrations, Tolkien insisted on veto power over anything inspired by the Disney studio. He had strong feelings about Disney's style.
Really? Interesting.
In the end, Allen and Unwin convinced him his own art was best, so he did 4 watercolors later that summer, plus a colored version of Hobbiton.
The ones we often see in editions now.
Exactly. One even has an inscription in Elvish script, Tengwar, on the Smaug drawing, cursing any thief. These illustrations became inseparable from the book for many people.
Let's talk about the actual publication journey. Sounds like Tolkien was very involved.
Extremely. The article mentions extensive correspondence between him, Allen, and Unwin in 1937. Apparently 26 long letters from Tolkien, 31 back, discussing every detail.
Wow. So it was finally published.
September 21st, 1937, by Allen and Unwin. Just 1,500 copies initially.
That's tiny.
It was. But it sold out incredibly fast. They needed a second printing of 2,300 by December. It clearly hit the mark immediately.
What about in the U.S.?
Houghton Mifflin published it in March 1938. Also a success, sold over 5,000 copies that year. And this positive reception from critics and readers
led the publisher to ask for a sequel.
Exactly, which is what prompted Tolkien to start writing The Lord of the Rings in December 1937. The success of The Hobbit directly led to the epic.
Amazing connection. Did anything interrupt its success?
World War II did. Paper rationing in the UK hit publishing hard. And tragically, some of the printed copies were destroyed in a bombing raid in 1940, so the book became hard to find until 1943.
Oh, wow.
But sales soared again in the 1950s after Lord of the Rings came out, and, well, by 2008 it had sold over 100 million copies.
Incredible numbers. And first editions are worth a fortune now.
Astronomical sums. A record £137,000 in 2015 for one with an inscription by Tolkien in Old English. Shows its cultural status.
Now, the book wasn't static, was it? There were revisions.
Right. Especially once Lord of the Rings started taking shape. The biggest change involved the ring itself.
Because its role became much bigger, more sinister.
Exactly. The original version of the Riddles in the Dark chapter had Gollum being almost friendly, promising the ring as a prize if Bilbo won. He even offers to help Bilbo find the way out after losing it.
That sounds completely different.
It is. It makes the ring seem like just a trinket. So Tolkien rewrote it. In the new version, Gollum promises guidance if Bilbo wins. When he loses and finds the ring gone, he immediately plans to kill Bilbo. He leads Bilbo out accidentally while hunting him.
And Bilbo chooses not to kill him. Much darker. Fits the later story better.
Definitely. Tolkien sent this revised chapter to Unwin in 1947, just as an example of needed changes. But Unwin misunderstood.
And put it straight into the next edition.
Yes. Tolkien was apparently quite surprised when he saw the proofs for the 1951 edition. He then had to explain the discrepancy, saying the first version was Bilbo's embellished story and the revision was the truth. Clever fix.
A bit of retroactive continuity. Did he try other big revisions?
He did, around 1960. He started rewriting The Hobbit entirely, trying to make the style match Lord of the Rings, less like a children's story.
Really? What did he change?
He rewrote Chapter 2 with much more detail, crossing the Brandywine, visiting Bree and the Prancing Pony, meeting Thorin's subjects, mentioning rangers, even named Gandalf's horse Rohald.
Sounds like a major overhaul.
It was, but ultimately he abandoned it. Maybe realized it would change the book's unique character too much.
Probably wise. Any other significant revisions?
Minor tweaks in 1966, mainly for copyright reasons after an unauthorized U.S. edition of Lord of the Rings appeared. One key change was clarifying Elrond's line about swords made by gnomes to High Elves of the West, aligning the terminology with the broader legendarium.
Fascinating how the book evolved even after publication. What about translations? It's read all over the world now.
A truly global phenomenon.
Yeah.
But the translation history has some interesting and sometimes troubling aspects.
Such as?
Well, negotiations for a German edition started back in 1938, but the German publisher asked Tolkien to prove his Aryan descent.
Oh no, during that era.
Exactly. Tolkien's response was incredibly strong. He completely rejected the pernicious and unscientific race doctrine, mentioning his Jewish friends. The deal fell through, obviously, and the German translation didn't happen until 1957. A powerful stance from Tolkien.
Absolutely admirable. What was the first actual translation?
Swedish in 1947. It's called Hampen. Tolkien wasn't too keen on it, felt it took liberties. A later Swedish version in 1962, illustrated by Tove Jansson, was better received.
Tove Jansson, creator of the Moomins. Wow.
Yeah. And during his lifetime, it was translated into Polish, Dutch, Portuguese, Spanish, Japanese, many others. He was apparently thrilled about an upcoming Icelandic translation just before he died, given his love for Norse. Now it's in over 50 languages, Latin even. Hobbit is ill.
Latin! That's dedication. What about Russian?
First appeared as an excerpt in 1969. The first full translation was by Natalia Rachmanova in 1976, which is still the most common one. Her illustrations, by Mikhail Bilimlinsky, famously made Bilbo look like a popular Soviet actor, Yevgeny Leonov.
Really? That's specific.
Apparently so. Her translation is generally well regarded, but there's a funny detail linguists point out. She translated hairy feet, often as just hairy legs.
Waiting to.
Some Russian illustrators drawing hobbits with weirdly bear-like feet shows the pitfalls of translation. And some other translations in the region were based on her Russian version, not the original English.
Layers upon layers of interpretation.
Exactly. Okay, so how was the book actually received when it first came out? Reception.
Mostly very positively, right? C.S. Lewis wrote glowing reviews.
He did. Two very influential ones in the Times and the TLS. Praised the blend of scholarship and poetry, the narrative flow from cozy start to epic chant. And he predicted it could become a classic. Spot on, obviously.
Did everyone agree the publisher compared it to Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah, based on the authors both being Oxford academics. Some critics pushed back on that comparison, though. Anne Carroll Moore in the Hornbook saw connections more to writers like William Tarn or William Morris and traced its roots to Norse sagas, Beowulf, genuine Saxon tradition, showed its unique blend.
Was it up for awards?
Nominated for the Carnegie Medal in the UK, but didn't win. It did win a prize from the New York Herald Tribune in 1938 as the best children's book of the season in the US, so it got early recognition.
But perceptions changed after Lord of the Rings.
Somewhat. Some critics started seeing it just as a prelude, a warm-up act. Randall Helms called it a necessary stage in Tolkien's development.
But others disagreed.
Strongly. Critics like K.W. Sullivan and John Rateliff argued it has its own distinct literary merit. It wasn't just a stepping stone. Paul Kocher pointed out the huge differences in tone and audience, suggesting they should be read independently. That debate continues, really.
But overall, its status is secure.
Oh, absolutely. Generally hailed as a classic of children's literature, W.H. Auden called it one of the best of the 20th century. A Books for Keeps poll named it the most important 20th century novel for older children. Its magic endures.
Okay, let's dig into the themes and analysis. This is where we get into the deeper stuff. First up, Bilbo as a modern anachronism and the clash of styles.
This is a really interesting angle. Tolkien, steeped in ancient epics, creates a hero who is, well, not heroic in that old sense.
Right, Bilbo is like a modern person dropped into a saga. Someone called him a Victorian in Valhalla. He has modern worries, weaknesses, no desire for revenge. He doesn't fit the mold.
So the question becomes, how does this ordinary, modern-ish person cope in this epic world? Initially, the dwarves see him as just baggage. The ring helps, sure, it's an equalizer.
But his real heroism comes from elsewhere.
Exactly. From his own courage, his cleverness, that moment of pity for Gollum walking into Smaug's lair. The article calls the answer sober and nevertheless relatively optimistic, suggesting ordinary people can find heroism.
And this clash is reflected in the language.
Definitely. You see archaic language next to Bilbo's more modern, polite, almost businesslike way of speaking. Think of his asking about payment terms versus the dwarves singing about gold and mountains, or the whole good morning exchange with Gandalf.
It creates humor but also highlights different values.
Precisely. Sometimes the archaic characters, like Thorin driven by greed, come off worse than the modern Bilbo with his common sense. But interestingly, in the end, like Thorin's farewell to Bilbo, the different styles manage to convey the same deep emotion, a connection beneath the surface differences.
Okay, next theme. Development of the main character. This feels central.
It is the core of the book, really. Bilbo's journey of growth.
He starts as this ultimate Baggins, respectable, predictable, loves comfort, total routine.
But he has that Tookish side too, the adventurous streak from his mother's family. Gandalf's arrival sparks this internal conflict. Baggins' comfort versus Tookish curiosity.
And that conflict drives his decision to go.
Largely, yes. And maybe overhearing Gloin dismiss him gives him that final push needing to prove himself. Throughout the journey, he evolves. From grocer to, well, almost a hero. He gains respect, even leads at times.
Returns home a poet, definitely not a typical Baggins anymore.
But it's not like the Took side wins completely. The analysis suggests it's about integrating both sides, finding a balance. Thorin's final words capture it. A share of courage and a share of wisdom, well blended. That self-discovery is key.
Then there's avarice, greed, a major theme.
Huge. The article connects it to Tolkien's own poetry and back to the cursed hoard in Beowulf. Gold corrupts.
And we see different reactions to Smaug's treasure.
We do. The Elven King sees beauty, Bilbo takes little, but the dwarves, especially Thorin, fall under its irresistible spell. Dragon sickness.
It makes Thorin break his word, treat Bilbo terribly over the Arkenstone.
Shows how deeply greed has warped him. Tom Shippey, apparently, sees this part as a didactic novel. Bilbo as modern man facing ancient greed. Bilbo tries to fix it peacefully, but fails. Even the Elf King is wary of fighting just for gold.
Unity only comes when the goblins attack.
Right, an external threat forces them together. But Thorin does get that deathbed redemption, and Dain, his heir, is much more generous with the treasure afterwards. It's a cautionary cycle.
Underscores the danger of valuing gold over loyalty. What about luck and eucatastrophe? Things seem to work out very conveniently sometimes.
The narrator points it out often. Elrond reading the moon letters just right, the thrush knocking at the perfect moment for the secret door. Even getting lost turns out to be fortunate.
That's just dumb luck.
Tolkien didn't see it that way. He talked about the not randomness of chance, a sense of providence maybe. Shippey suggests it's providence and free will working together. Gandalf basically confirms it wasn't just luck that saved Bilbo, he was part of a bigger plan, an instrument of providence.
And the eagles arriving at the battle.
That's the classic example of eucatastrophe. Tolkien's term for that sudden, joyous turn when all seems lost, he saw it as the essence of fairy tales, connected even to the hope of the Gospels. That cry, the eagles are coming. Pure eucatastrophe. Hope against hope.
Provides that underlying sense of good ultimately triumphing. Now, the concept of the dragon. Smaug isn't just a big lizard.
Not at all. Tolkien's study of the Beowulf dragon was key. He saw that dragon as embodying malice, greed, destruction, but also having realistic traits. Smaug reflects this. He has a personality, sarcastic, arrogant, that chilling politeness.
Intelligent and bestial.
Exactly. A complex, memorable villain, drawing on a long literary tradition.
Finally, in themes, the article mentions possible reflections of Tolkien's war experience.
This is interpretive, of course, but some see parallels. Bilbo leaving his cozy home for a dangerous journey in a foreign land where old-style heroism doesn't quite fit, echoing WWI experiences.
But Tolkien didn't write directly about the war like others did.
No, not with irony or cynicism. He explored themes of heroism and loss through myth and fantasy, but maybe the experience shaped the story. The way Smaug is defeated involves planning and specific knowledge, not just brute force. The siege of Lake Town feels quite modern in its organization. Bard acts more like a 20th century officer organizing defenses.
Little phrases too, like fighting to the last round.
Yeah, suggesting echoes of more recent warfare. And Smaug's desolation reflecting the war's impact on landscapes. Even the goblins industry and weaponry perhaps hinting at anxieties about technology and destruction.
And Bilbo's final comment after the battle.
Anyway, it has been a victory, but a sad business. Captures that complex feeling about conflict. So, while not an allegory, the war experience might subtly inform the book's mood and themes.
Let's look at the artistic features. Starting with style, it changes throughout the book, doesn't it?
Dramatically. Starts light, humorous, almost whimsical. Lots of songs, history, satire, work songs, laments. Scary things like the trolls are handled comically. It eases the reader into the fantasy world.
But it gets darker later on.
Much darker. The description of Lake Town's fate, the grimness of the dwarves before the battle, becomes more serious, more somber. The dwarves transform from comedians into warriors. The style in later chapters approaches the starkness of Norse sagas, like how Thorin's death implies Fili and Kili died too, just stated factually.
So the ending is happy, but
tinged with sadness, with loss. That mix is very characteristic of Tolkien. The evolving style mirrors Bilbo's journey and the story's increasing weight.
What about the role of the narrator, the voice telling the story?
It's very distinctive. He uses phrases like, of course, or to be sure, but then says something unexpected. Creates a feeling there's more going on than we're being told. Uses emphasis, remarkable. Belladonna took the famous Thorin builds importance and talks directly to the reader sometimes.
Like a guide.
A knowledgeable, slightly mischievous guide. Establishing the world, the characters, the moral compass. Elves are good people, goblins are evil, eagles are proud, but helpful sets the stage.
Okay, genre. We said children's literature, but it's more complex.
It has fairy tale elements. Cozy home versus dangerous otherworld, dragon-slaying quest, treasure hunt, unlikely hero. Bard is maybe the substitute hero doing the actual slaying.
But Bilbo's development makes it more...
Yes, his internal journey, his complexity, takes it beyond a simple fairy tale, closer to big literature. Plus the irony, like inventing golf. It fits English children's lit tradition, narrator, relatable heroes, safe versus dangerous places. It's also a Bildungsroman, a novel of education.
And definitely fantasy, high fantasy.
Absolutely. Tolkien pretty much set the mold for high fantasy with his detailed secondary world.
And the composition, the structure.
Basic quest, journey for treasure, return home. One analysis breaks it into 4 parts based on Bilbo's journey. Wilderland, Misty Mountains, Mirkwood, Lonely Mountain, each with preparation, danger, rescue, rest, recurring patterns, capture, separation, escape. Bilbo faces trials, gets rewards, courage, respect, treasure. Another view compares it to Beowulf's rise and fall structure. Bilbo's encounters with Gollum and Smaug are key moments, but for Bilbo, they represent a rise, spiritual maturation, not death. Shows careful construction.
Okay, lastly, a quick look at adaptations. There have been loads.
So many. Stage plays going way back, even one Tolkien attended in Oxford, though he apparently didn't love the ending.
And films?
The odd Gene Deitch short in the 60s, very strange apparently. The Rankin Bass animated film from 1977 is probably the most famous early one.
That's the one I remember.
Right. Quite faithful in parts, but some changes. Maybe a stronger anti-war vibe. There were Soviet versions too, a TV play, an unfinished cartoon.
And then much later, Peter Jackson's trilogy.
Huge success, visually stunning, but also controversial among fans for adding a lot, changing the tone, connecting it much more directly to Lord of the Rings, using appendices material. Much more epic, less of a children's story feel.
Sparked a lot of debate about faithfulness.
Definitely. But besides film, there's been radio adaptations. A good BBC one from 1968. A graphic novel. Lots of computer games. Even musical works, overtures, ballets, operas.
Shows how much the story has inspired people across different art forms.
It really does. Its reach is incredible.
So wrapping up this incredibly detailed look, what's the main takeaway for you?
Just the sheer depth, I think. The layers of thought, mythology, linguistic detail, thematic exploration that went into what, on the surface, seems like a straightforward adventure. It's so much more than just a children's book.
I agree. It's been fascinating seeing how Tolkien blended that light adventure with really profound ideas about heroism, greed, character growth. Makes you appreciate all those seemingly small details we talked about.
Hopefully, for you listening, this deep dive gives you a new lens to see The Hobbit through. Maybe you'll reread it now, looking for those Norse echoes, or tracking Bilbo's growth, or noticing the narrator's voice. The Wikipedia article is still there as a great resource, too.
Definitely worth revisiting, because like Bilbo's own journey, the story of The Hobbit just keeps revealing more layers, more richness the closer you look. It really is a journey there and back again, and finding things have changed.